well. Thanks for joining the call. So we have a couple of our core investors here today. So I'm going to introduce Ray Jordan. So Ray is the principal for a very sophisticated U.S. family office that is based both in Massachusetts and California. And Ray's actually ex Johnson and Johnson, Pfizer, Amgen, has super awesome operational experience. But he runs this sophisticated family office that is focused primarily on healthcare investments. So Ray, if you want to share a couple of words, that would be great. And then I know you have another meeting to get to after this, so if you drop off, that'd be fine. But thanks for
Yeah,
being with
no.
us today. And Ray,
Am I
you're not
coming?
on camera, just to let you know.
I see that. Yeah, I can't seem to make my camera connect on this today. Am I coming through on audio?
Yeah. Yeah, you're clear.
For you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let me speak, and I'll try to make my camera work at some point. But nice to meet you all. So I oversee investing for a three-generation family office. So fundamentally, we've put our family assets across three generations into an LLC. I oversee the investing for it. We've done now some 68 private investments in the life sciences area, about an equivalent amount outside of life sciences. But within life sciences, we've really had a focus on potential breakthrough innovations that we felt had a very clear first application, and with the ability potentially to move beyond that application to other downstream opportunities. And then we look for a team and intellectual property, that are sufficient to actually move that forward to the market. And over the years, we've seen ARC Medical just typify exactly what we were looking for. And over the roughly 3 years that we've been invested in ARC, we've done multiple tranches to where now the investment is by far the largest of our 68 life science investments. It's one we still have high conviction about. I've had the honor of also becoming an advisor to the company, so getting a much closer look at the team, its ability to meet commitments and meet the clinical trial needs. I come out of a career of working with much larger life sciences companies. One of the earlier engagements was with Johnson& Johnson, overseeing the creation of their corporate affairs for medical devices. So I had particularly close insight in the medical device space. So again, very high conviction, very high comfort with the innovation and with the progress that ARC is making. Glad to be supportive of the company.
Hey, thanks, Ray. I appreciate your investments and your support today on the call. Yeah. Tian, I'm going to turn it back to you. Maybe you want to do a kind of a semi-formal introduction, then we've got some folks on the line here. We could probably get started.
Yep. Okay, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us today for what we believe is a super exciting opportunity here. Arc Medical is a company that significantly improves surgical patient recovery by preventing internal adhesions. The company has a couple of great products. One is for orthopedic surgeries, knee and shoulder primarily, and the other one is for gynecologic and abdominal surgeries. And Chris will go through those with you briefly. So, a couple of key investment considerations. The company is operating in massive markets. You're looking at 11 million plus patients annually with a total addressable market in excess of 11 billion. Excellent efficacy and clinical data. Chris gave us a little preview. He's getting some really good data coming in. And it's mainly for the company's lead products for knee and shoulder. Strong IP, exclusivity on the company's products through 2039 and beyond. Company also has great fundraising traction. They've already raised 39 million, 21 in equity and 18 in non-dilutive. And they will be closing this round hopefully by the end of June. The company has a unicorn level exit potential, which would represent a 20x return based on comps in the wound healing arena. Finally, the company is a world-class team. The team is amazing. They've designed, developed, built and exited billion-dollar products for some of the major companies in the world, including J&J, Stryker, Smith & Nephew, Amgen, and Moderna. We're going to go for about 45, 50 minutes. Chris will present for roughly 20 minutes or so. We want to leave a lot of time available for Q&A. Speaking of which, if you have questions, you can directly message myself or Avery or Emily, or put the question that you might have into the chat box, or wait until we start Q&A and then raise your hand. We're also going to be conducting a confidential investor poll, so we'd love to get 100% participation among investors, and you can indicate if you're super interested, interested, not interested, or not interested but know somebody. So we are recording this, so if you guys have a desire to see the replay or share it with other co-investors, just let us know. We'll be able to provide that to you. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Chris Springate, CEO. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for sharing today.
Hey, thanks, Tian. Appreciate the really kind, great summary introduction for ARC. And I will just add for folks, look, if you have a question, feel free just to interrupt me verbally, come off mute, interrupt me. I'd rather than having a fire hose of information coming from me, I'd rather that it's more of a conversation, and that's helpful if it's not just one-sided. So please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. I'll just give a little bit of my background first. So I was very fortunate. I started a couple of decades ago with another local company called Angiotech, and I was super fortunate. I was a member of their team that designed and developed the Taxus drug-eluting stent, and this was an amazing product, a very complex technology, but simple story. We coated these little metal springs with drugs. They were put into the blood vessels that feed heart attack patients, and the heart attack patients healed so much better by keeping those blood vessels open to provide blood to the heart muscle itself. Um, the business folks at that time partnered the product with Boston Scientific. Sales in the first year were $2 billion. It was just like an amazing success. We took that market away from Johnson and Johnson. And so today, now at ARC, the new company, we also appreciate that. Look, it's a complex technology, but a simple story. So we are preventing what are called internal adhesions, surgical adhesions. These are scars that form inside the body after common surgeries. We have elegant liquid medical devices. They're fast and easy to apply into the surgical site at the end of the surgery. They flow throughout the entire surgical site, provide a temporary physical barrier that prevents the formation of these internal adhesions, these internal scars. They're biodegradable. They're gone in 30 days. So briefly, that's what we're doing. We see this as having the potential to be another unicorn company, again, with very large sales of in excess of $1 billion post launches. So I'm going to load up a deck. I'll walk you folks through some key slides. Again, please, if you have any questions, just interrupt me and ask. Can everybody see the title slide on the screen? Okay. Somebody's going to say yes or give me a thumbs up. Yes. Jen smiling. Okay, you can see the slide. Great. So look, as I said, we're improving surgical patient outcomes by preventing these internal adhesions. And so these are large unmet medical needs and markets through surgical adhesions. The total addressable markets are 11 million patients, over $11 billion potentially in revenues annually. And we have just some fantastic clinical data. So we have a Joe-Coat 10 mil prefilled syringe, which is for orthopedic surgery, specifically for knee and shoulder. We're halfway through a knee clinical trial. So these are patients undergoing an ACL reconstruction. And so I'll get into the details in a couple of slides, but we're halfway through. And so separate from that, we've had a total of 20 patients, 70 knees and 3 shoulders, where they've had a previous surgery in their joint, resulting in a very stiff joint. They've come back now in for a reoperation to cut those adhesions apart. They're likely to reform. So the surgeons have received expanded access, essentially compassionate use authorizations on a per patient basis. And we're seeing fantastic efficacy data in those patients as well. And we have a separate product, IP Coat. It's a 30 mil prefilled syringe. This is for abdominal gynecological surgeries. We have a very large safety clinical trial that we've done, 76 healthy volunteers, in which we've proven out the safety of medical devices. We just treated our first expanded access surgery patient with just amazing efficacy, zero reformation adhesions, zero new adhesions. And our products are backed by very strong intellectual property. We have five separate patent families. They all have composition of matter claims, and these have granted in the US, they've granted in Japan. We have patents that have granted throughout the world in the key territories. And so, two key, very near term inflection points coming up for us. And this is important because now that we have the clinical data coming in and it's looking very positive, we have a number of very large US based strategics that are international. So, Baxter, Stryker, Johnson and Johnson, list goes on, that are following the clinical trials very closely. So after we have the top line data from these clinical trials, we believe we have an excellent chance of forming a partnership or getting an investment, even perhaps being acquired at that time by one of these larger medical devices. So for the knee clinical trial that we're running now, we expect top line data in December. That's coming up pretty quick. We're starting a clinical trial in gynecologic surgery patients. We expect that top line data mid 2027. So that's a very high level overview. And now I'll just get into some of the details here. So, what's the most common surgical complication today? And of course, it is these surgical adhesions. These form during the first 5 days after the surgery. After that, they continue to thicken and tighten. And really, they're just a type of internal scar that cause havoc in the body if they're not prevented. So orthopedic patients, more than 5% of patients undergoing, it could be a sports knee surgery, a shoulder replacement, a knee replacement, they get super stiff where they can't bend their knee past about 90 degrees. So, or raise their arm past about shoulder height so they can't change their shirt by themselves. And this is a typical patient. So this is Jane. She had a very common knee surgery, ACL, MCL repair. She was stuck at that 95 degrees, couldn't bend her knee more than that, like couldn't walk up and down stairs safely. This is a physiotherapist. She's in her 30s, very active soccer athlete. So she's doing all the physio, but was stuck there. Um, Separately from the orthopedic, the adhesions are a huge issue in gynecologic and abdominal surgery patients. Over 30% of the patients end up forming adhesions, so many women become infertile due to these adhesions, and any patient undergoing abdominal surgery can end up having the small bowel obstructed by the adhesions. This is life-threatening because the small bowel can then rupture and you end up with the feces inside the abdominal pelvic cavity. The patients get sepsis and they die. So look, we are focused on the go-to markets, abbreviated here as SOM, serviceable obtainable markets, within 5 years of launches of treating over 1 million patients annually for over $1 billion in revenues. And so these are the products. We have Joco, it's a 10 ml pre-filled syringe, liquid medical device, really fast and easy to apply. And I'm actually just going to show you the product being used in a surgery. And so this is one of our expanded access patients who had a previous shoulder surgery resulted in a super stiff shoulder. They came in for the reoperation. The operation was done by arthroscopy. And so this is at the end of the surgery. And so the gel coat here is in the top left of your screen. And you'll see the application here. The metal you see, this is the arthroscope. The other end is still inside the joint. And so it's a standard attachment, and they just push the gel coat into the joint. What we've shown through some elegant radial label studies is the liquid medical device flows through an entire surgical cavity and provides this temporary physical barrier that prevents the formation of the internal scars. So super fast and easy to apply. Like this isn't the surgeon, it's just the surgeon's assistant who's applying it. We don't need to train anybody. Almost no additional time or workflow is required for the application of the gel coat. And similarly for IP coat, the volume's a little larger in the abdominal pelvic cavity. So it's 2 mils per kilogram body weight. So somebody weighs 165 pounds, they're only getting 150 mils. It's about 3/5 of a cup of fluid, less than 2 minutes to apply. Again, that's just to push. Easily used in laparoscopic or open surgeries. And so this first 5 days is really critical. And so in this cartoon, what we've shown here is we've colored it blue, but as you see in the liquid medical device is actually clear. Um, Following application into the surgical site, the gel coat or IP coat flows throughout that entire surgical area, provides a temporary physical barrier, and that prevents the formation of adhesions. It's biodegradable, so it's gone within about 30 days and results in really nice, healthy healing of these tissues. So here's some of the efficacy data. So these are expanded access patients where we've gotten approvals on a per patient basis. We've treated 20. Very safe in all the patients. All of the patients have recovered very nicely. We have a long-term sustained efficacy data on the first 12 knee patients, and we are showing an increase of 28 degrees in that knee band, and that is huge. Just 10 degrees is clinically meaningful. For the three shoulder patients, we're showing an average increase of 68 degrees, which is huge. Again, very clinically meaningful. These patients can now, change their shirt by themselves. So coming back to Jane, she was our very first patient. She came in for a reoperation. They cut those adhesions apart. They put the Joe code in. She went from only 95 degrees to 135 degrees bend in that knee. She's either trail running or riding her bike daily. Separately, we're running this clinical trial. These are knee anterior cruciate ligaments, so ACL reconstruction surgery patients. We're treating a total of 24 patients with Joe code. We just treated the 12th patient last week, so we're halfway through that. They're being compared with 50 very recent historical control patients. They had similar surgeries in the same clinic but didn't get the Joe code. So we expect top-line data from this clinical trial in December of this year. So that's coming up pretty quick. Yeah. So separate from that, for IP coat with the for gynecological and abdominal, we treated our first gynecologic surgery patient under expanded access approval. This poor woman had a 10-inch endometrioma, if you can imagine, in her pelvic cavity. The surgeon spent 3 hours, two of them, 3 hours cutting apart adhesions that have resulted from the inflammation from the endometriosis. They deflated the endometrioma, and then these two guys were so happy how fast and easy it was to push the IP coat in. And what is amazing is in these surgeries where you're cutting part adhesions, they're long, complex surgeries. These patients almost always have new adhesions and what we call reformation adhesions, where the adhesions that they cut apart reformed. However, the surgeons went back 6 weeks after this surgery and application of IPCO. They did an extensive ultrasound, no new adhesions, no reformation adhesions. So really fantastic efficacy data in this complex surgery. And so again, our products are backed by a very large safety clinical trial. So this is 76 healthy volunteers that received IP coat, and we showed that the medical devices are safe, including at much higher volumes that we're moving forward with in the surgeries and the clinical trials. We're about to start a clinical trial in women undergoing gynecologic endometriosis surgery. 22 women will receive IP coat, 11 receive a blinded placebo-controlled solution. The surgeons go back 12 weeks later. They do what's called the second look laparoscopy, and they score the prevention or the formation of adhesions. So it's a pretty fast clinical trial with really a 3-month primary efficacy endpoint. We expect mid 2027 that we'll see the top line data from this clinical trial. So competitive landscape, we have a greenfield opportunity within orthopedics. There are no direct competitors on the market. The indirect competitors, if you will, are comprised of expensive, painful procedures to either break or cut apart adhesions, but only after they form. IP Coat confers a number of competitive advantages within the gynecologic and abdominal surgery space, including super fast and easy to use as a liquid compared with the films that are the primary markets, and also that our product can be used in a laparoscopic surgery, whereas it's really tough to try and get a film through a laparoscope. In head-to-head comparisons of the very well accepted animal model for gynecologic and abdominal adhesions, we show superior efficacy compared with the other products. Again, because IP Coat flows and provides a temporary physical barrier throughout the entire abdominal pelvic cavity. Intellectual property is very strong. Again, we have 5 composition of matter patents issued within the US. Under patent term extension, we expect that last patent to expire in 2041. In addition, we have complexity and trade secrets around the key components of our liquid medical device, how we manufacture them, how we ultra purify them. We've done a lot to date. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this slide because I think you've got a good sense. And so this is where we're focused now. It's getting the top line data from both the Joe Coat knee orthopedic clinical trial, again expected at the end of 2026, mid 2027 for IP Coat for gynecologic, and then starting the pivotal clinical trials in the US. Looking for sales, top line data in the US then from these larger pivotal clinical trials in 2029, sales in the US starting in 2030. Our team's done this before. Alison Crow at the bottom right of your screen, fantastic VP of clinical. She was instrumental in the design and then running the clinical trials that resulted in commercialization of sales of three earlier generation anti-surgical adhesion medical devices. Robert Litchfield, our chief medical officer, he leads a team of 15 surgeon key opinion leaders. All of these surgeons have recent relevant clinical trial experience. We're very familiar with the reimbursement. It ranges from a direct reimbursement through to being covered under the diagnosis related group umbrella payment. And depending on the market and whether it's gynecological or abdominal, we're looking at a list price of $1,000 to $2,000, ranging from the IP code to the Joe code, and an ARC profit margin ranging from $350 to $870 per unit. Our primary focus is on the US, again, looking at over $1 billion a year in sales within 5 years of launches, and then with some smaller sales in some of these territories that are outside of the US. In summary, look, through surgical adhesions, we have very large unmet medical needs and markets. We have really compelling clinical data, efficacy and safety for Joe-code for orthopedic, compelling clinical data, efficacy and safety for IP code for gynecological and abdominal. Um, Fantastic, very strong intellectual property. Just as an aside, our patent counsel has actually invested cash into ARC 3 times, including in our last financing. So top line data is one of our key near-term inflection points. December 2026 for Joe code, and then mid 2027 for IP code. Again, this is important because of the large US-based strategics that are following these clinical trials very closely. We expect that we have an excellent chance of, again, an investment, a partnership, or an acquisition after getting these top line data in hand. So we've raised 22 million in equity to date. We've almost matched that with 18 million of non-dilutive. That's a combination of revenues, tax grants, and research grants. So today we're focused on raising 5 million. Again, these two clear near-term inflection points within the next, 15 months for both Joe code in December and IP code mid 2027. There's a buffer in that 5 million actually provides us with over 2 years of runway. So happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Great. Before we jump into that, I think we'd like to run a poll here. So this is for investors only, and we'll go ahead and launch the poll. So if you guys are very interested, not interested, but have some investors who might be or not interested at all, let us know, please. And Chris, yeah, I've gotten a couple of questions, and if anyone has questions, you can obviously put them directly into the chat box, like Greg did, or you can raise your hand and ask directly, or just private message myself or Avery or Emily. So we'll kick things off with Greg here. I'm wondering how scalable they are as a company, as a team. If oh, never mind. Chris, Greg, I get it. Okay, so maybe you can address that really quickly here. And then Stephen has a question about the form and valuation of the raise.
Yeah,
Yeah, to answer that, I have 7 key areas that I look at for companies for scaling, and I've been at 7 spine and orthopedic company startups, so I have quite a bit of experience in the space. You also talked about the taxes taking away the stent share from J&J. This is not the forum for this, but there's a little bit more of the story, Chris, there, like a lot, because I was at ACS Guidant and we took away the share from everybody, but unimportant here. The old days were the old days, the new days are the new days. You clearly have something really scalable and exceptional here.
thanks, Craig. And we should definitely follow up offline. And so to answer your question about scalability, so there are, I think, two key parts about scalability. So one is around manufacturing, and the other is, around sales, right? And so regarding manufacturing, absolutely scalable. We have our own ISO 1345 certified GMP manufacturing facility where we manufacture the key component of the liquid medical devices. And so that is readily scalable. We literally in our facility, just by expanding the number of teams, can do 1 million units of the Joe code a year. And the IP code's a larger volume, so it's a smaller number than that. That process could also be easily transferred to an API manufacturer that then we could scale up where we don't have to build out a facility. Separate from that, we already contract out the manufacture of the finished sterile liquid medical devices. That's readily scalable. Lots of folks do that. And so that again, we could add additional contract manufacturing organizations, CMOs to do that. So for regarding the sales, what we've done is twofold. One is we have systematically been meeting with all of the major US based international medical device companies. Again, companies like Baxter, Stryker, they're in both of these spaces for orthopedics and gynecological abdominal, as well as, J&J and a number of other companies. So they are following us very closely. We believe there is an excellent chance they will just take us out, particularly as we're getting the US top line data coming in and getting that approval. They can turn around and then sell our products, and there are 20,000 hospitals worldwide. But having said that, we've also modeled out how would we build out sales in the US ourselves. So we've modeled out two separate sales, leadership, and support teams, one for orthopedic, the other for gynecologic and abdominal, and then looking to hire an army of 1099s independent distributors that have these existing relationships with the orthopedic surgeons. So that's the orthopedic side. And this is exciting for these sales reps because at a $2,000 average selling price and a 30% commission, it's $600. This becomes the first thing that they're taking out of the bag. Similarly, on the IP code for gynecologic side, so it's $1,000 average selling price. It's still, a $300 commission. As you probably know, the gynecologic sales market's a little bit more nuanced in that, yes, there are some good gynecological independent distributors, the 1099s. However, there aren't as many as there are in the orthopedics. So we'd be looking at a hybrid sales model in that gynecologic. So we've modeled this out and continue to work on that. Yeah. So I know, as you said, look, there's 7 different areas we need to think about, but these really, in my experience, are the two key bottlenecks. So we've already planned through this, how to get through them. So thanks for the question about the scalability. I'm gonna go to some additional questions here. I'm just gonna read them out of the chat. There was a
Thanks. Yep.
question. Sorry, Tian, you want to do it or you want me to do it? However
No,
you
no, no,
like.
you go for it. Go for
Okay,
it.
all right, thanks. Yeah,
Absolutely. I'm
yeah,
putting in the questions into the chat from that I'm getting from others. So
super.
uh,
If I miss
if you
something, let me know. Okay.
yeah, and by the way, guys, if you want, you can just raise your hand and ask, or just type it yourself, if
Yeah.
you don't mind attribution.
So there was a question, who was the gentleman at the beginning who was doing the introduction? So that's Ray Jordan. So he's a principal at Elmstead Partners, LLC. So very sophisticated US-based family office. They have invested in 68 different healthcare companies. Briefly, Ray himself has some fantastic operational experience. So was very high up in J&J with their corporate affairs, as well as Pfizer. Moderna during the heyday, you might remember 2020 with the COVID, they actually brought him in to lead their corporate affairs team. So he has some fantastic operational experience. As he said, they've been investing in ARC over the last couple of years. They've made about 6 investments, totaling 750,000 US, and we are their largest investee by far. So that was Ray Jordan. Um, Just looking at the next questions here.
Steven had a question on the deal itself.
Yeah, what is the form and valuation of the raise? So I appreciate that question, Stephen. And so we are actually finalizing that. So I apologize for that. But we've been just going back and forth internally, and we do have a number of investors that are interested. So we're working with them to make sure we have an investment vehicle that they are comfortable with and that is attractive to the investors. So we will get back to you over the next week or so with that. Yeah, and happy to send that to you and the rest of the folks on the call.
The next one is, can you walk us through your primary and secondary endpoints for both IP code and J code pivotal trials vis-a-vis the regulatory pathway?
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Tian. Yeah, I'm just going to load up the deck 'cause, and then I'll answer them early, but it'll also, I think, help to be able to see.
Sure.
So importantly, the US, so right now, I think you get the sense, look, we're running what for the US are pilot clinical trials. One for Joko in orthopedic knee surgery patients, and the other for IPICO in gynecologic endometriosis surgery patients. The US pivotal clinical trials are going to have exactly the same design so that we don't have any surprises, but the number of patients will be larger. So, for example, for Joe for the knee US pivotal clinical trial, we're modeling currently 334 patients, half on Joe half on a blinded placebo-controlled solution. And that number, of course, will be refined as we have the efficacy data come in from this pilot clinical trial. So let me walk you through this. So patients come in, they get an ACL, so anterior cruciate ligament reconstruction surgery. They take out part of the quadriceps tendon and use that to help repair the ACL, the ligament. The patients may have other pathology. So, for example, they may have a meniscus that needs to be repaired at the same time. And so at the end of the surgery, and these are done by arthroscopy, at the end of the surgery, they put in the 10 mils of the Joe coat. They go back at various time points, 2.2 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. 12 weeks, which is really fast, is their primary efficacy and safety time point. We will continue to follow patients for a year after that, but this is the critical time point. We use the data from that time point to then apply and get approval from the US FDA to run the pivotal clinical trial. So the primary efficacy outcome is what is the range of motion? And in this clinical trial, we are looking to not have a loss of range of motion. When these patients come in for their ACL repair, they already have full range of motion, but they need that repair. They typically end up with stiff knees and they lose range of motion. I'm really happy to share with you. We actually have these data because this is an open arm. We have these data on the first three patients. Not only do we not see a loss in the range of motion, we actually see an average increase of 5 degrees in that range of motion for these first three patients at this primary efficacy time point. So pretty exciting. Secondary efficacy endpoints then are the patient-reported outcome measures. We have three different tools that are used for the patient-reported outcome measures. And so then moving to the gynecologic clinical trial. Um, so again, the US pivotal will look very similar to this. The number of patients will be much larger. And so in this clinical trial, women coming in for what is called an endometriosis surgery. As you may know, endometriosis, it's a really huge, challenging condition for women. They often can't have babies while they have the endometriosis. They have chronic pain and suffering from the endometriosis. So they come in for the surgery where they then take that endometriosis out. Many of these women, when they come in for this surgery, even though it's their first surgery, they have adhesions within that pelvic cavity or abdominal cavity because of the inflammation from the endometriosis. So not only do these patients undergo surgery for endometriosis, which causes adhesions, many of them are undergoing adhesiolysis. They're getting the adhesions cut apart. And as we talked about briefly, these adhesions, when they're cut apart, will often grow back and be thicker and tighter. We have amazing data in that first complex surgery patient that I shared with you under the expanded access approval. We've done some fantastic studies resulting in 3/4 of the animals in two reformation studies completely adhesion free of reformation adhesions. So we're excited about this clinical trial. So what's interesting is 12 weeks after the primary surgery, the patients come back and we do what's called a second look laparoscopy. And so the surgeon goes in with a laparoscope. They videotape the first surgery. When they come back for the second surgery, they videotape the inside of the abdominal pelvic cavity. They have 16 specific sites at the videotape. And so the two primary efficacy endpoints are one, is the patient completely free of adhesions, yes or no? Okay. And the second primary efficacy endpoint is if they have adhesions, what's that mean number of adhesions? And both the surgeon scores those, and then we have Professor Dr. Michael Diamond. He's at Atlanta, really one of the top worldwide key opinion leaders for gynecological surgical adhesion prevention. So Mike, he's the blinded reviewer on these videotapes for that. Again, because the primary efficacy endpoint is at only 12 weeks, roughly 3 months, it's a pretty fast clinical trial to run. Yeah. Ken, maybe I'll just leave the deck open. Was there another question after this one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got a couple more questions. What do you see as the primary risk to trial success, and how are you mitigating those risks?
Yeah, I think primary risk is, until you treat a number of patients, in a way, you don't know what you don't know. How we've mitigated that risk is really twofold. We have run a lot of animal studies. So adult horses at University of Pennsylvania Bolton Center, pony foals at the Guelph Veterinary Research Center. many rabbits, and the rabbits, it may sound funny, but the rabbit gynecological abdominal model of adhesions is actually very translatable into humans. It's fantastic. And we as humans, we form adhesions the same way as a rabbit or a pony foal or a horse. And what we have, of course, is it's a medical device. It's a physical device. We prevent adhesions in humans exactly the same, right? Um, and so what's interesting, getting into the weeds a little bit, is we provide, for example, in IP coat for gynecological abdominal surgery, it's 2 mils per kilogram. So same amounts in rabbits. We show over half the rabbits completely adhesion free. We show superior efficacy compared with competing products. Again, because we cover that entire abdominal pelvic cavity. And bear with me on the math here, but humans on a per weight basis have a much smaller surface area. So we actually end up delivering more of the IP coat per surface area in humans than we do in rabbits. And that's part of the reason, in addition to the efficacy studies that we've done in animals, that we're seeing such fantastic efficacy data. So the second way that we mitigate what's going to be the outcome of these US pivotal clinical trials is we're running the pilots right now using exactly the same design, so we will not have any surprises. The endpoints, the timelines, all of that are the same. What's the next question, Tian?
The next one. Can you give us a sense of structure, upfront milestones, commercialization rights for some of your proposed partnerships, including the Japanese partner?
Yeah. So specifically for Japan, we have met with a total of 23 companies in Japan. We're super familiar with that market. Reimbursement for abdominal and gynecological surgeries is fantastic. It's direct from the government to the hospitals. We have 5 Japanese medical device companies that are following us very closely, and they are keen to see the data from the upcoming clinical trials. But our focus really is primarily US, right? Like this is the market for us. Um, we believe that there are 2 likely outcomes out of the potential of 3 with a large US strategic. And so one is an investment. We would expect to see an investment of, say, $20 million into the next financing to help pay for the US pivotal clinical trials, which of course is great because then we have credibility from the strategic and we reduce the amount of dilution because they're usually not so sensitive on that valuation. The other potential outcome is they actually do a partnership with us at that time, but most likely we would expect to see an investment and then to see an acquisition of ARC as we obtain the US pivotal clinical trial data and or obtain the initial approvals in the US.
Terrific.
Yeah. And so for
Um,
us, we're sorry, I just want to add a little bit to that.
yeah,
So just thinking about the exit, right? Like we are positioning for over $1 billion exit in 2030 as we obtain that approval. That is really what we're positioning for. And based on the markets, and you look at, 2 huge different products, one for orthopedics and one for gynecologic and eventually abdominal, like that's a realistic exit. And, we've done this before, right?
hmm Okay. Thank you for that, Chris. Um, Next question. What are the most realistic exit pathways? Is it acquisition, licensing, partnership? Can you talk about some comps that would inform your thinking and our expectations as an investor?
Yeah. So 90% chance it's going to be an acquisition for exit, right? And so again, we have been meeting regularly with over the last year, the very large US-based strategics, Baxter, Stryker, J&J, et cetera, and they're excited because we have the clinical data coming in. So that's most likely exit. And we continue to meet with, a couple dozen of these very large medical device companies that could easily acquire us, and update them. In addition to that, to provide optionality, we have been meeting regularly with approximately 15 different investment banks, and these are primarily New York based. So, investment banks ranging from Oppenheimer to H.C. Wainwright to RBC to Evercore, Sumitomo, the list goes on and on. So, as the markets come back and as we approach, commercialization in the US, that would be a great time to go public. So, we will have the optionality of going public and providing that as an exit. But again, 90% we're just going to be taking out, acquired as an acquisition. Yeah. And so for comps, so we're in what would be called the wound healing space. There are some great comps where companies have been acquired for over $1 billion as they've just started to build out their sales. Um, the most very direct recent comp specific for surgical adhesions is for an old asset called Seprafilm, And so this was developed by Genzyme originally and taken over by Sanofi. So a separate film, briefly, it's still the leading product on the market, even though it's 30 years old and it's off patent. It's a film that looks a lot like a post-it note. In the US, it's only approved for open abdominal surgeries. So they actually peaked at almost 600 million in sales in 2012 when many of the surgeries were still open. But the market dynamics are surgeries now are almost all done by laparoscopy, right? So laparoscope, minimally invasive. Tough to get one of these films through a laparoscope, and it's not approved for laparoscopic delivery, which is the market that we're going after for gynecologic, for example. It's, laparoscopic gynecologic surgeries, and then it'll be abdominal. So, separate film reduced their sales to 150 million a year. They were purchased by Baxter in 2020 for 350 million cash, right? And so here is an old tired product, but still a great exit, right? I mean, for ARC, 350 million would be a fantastic exit. Off the current financing, that would be a very large multiple. Again, we're pushing for the billion. So there's getting in the weeds a little bit, but that's the answer to the question there.
Thank you. We still have time for a couple more questions. I have a question here from Greg regarding endometriosis. He's the
Mhm.
co-founder of a company which has a device which treats this effectively. How does your device compare to this type of technology? It is a cooling ablative, soft and gentle to a woman's uterine and cervix.
Yeah, so we don't treat endometriosis per se. Our product is used to prevent the internal scars, the internal surgical adhesions that form after a surgery that's used to treat endometriosis. And it doesn't matter whether that surgery is done by, you know, laser excision, electrocautery, ablation, or a physical excision, right? So we are preventing the internal scars. I do want to just switch gears for a minute. So we have another one of our investors with us. And so this is another family office. So this is Andrew Ray, and so Andrew Ray runs Wood Green Ventures, and he's fantastic as well because like the earlier gentleman you met, Ray Jordan from Elmstead Partners, Andrew Ray is a former operator, so was a very street smart chief financial officer and then a CEO, and he's run and led both private and publicly listed biotech companies. So Andrew, if you want to share a few words,
Oh, sure. Chris.
your perception as an investor in our last financing, that'd be great, please.
Yeah, yeah. So I made a six-figure investment in Chris's last round. I've had the pleasure of knowing Chris for several decades. We, in fact, took Angiotech public in 1997. Chris made myself and many of the team members in the syndicate a lot of money as that company went to over 2 billion in peak sales and became a unicorn on NASDAQ in partnership with Boston Scientific. I'm impressed with the team. I think, that was a great question in terms of risk mitigation here. Chris has surrounded himself with key opinion leaders of the top tier, including Bob Litchfield, who works with Smith and Nephew, with Stryker, etc. So Chris has made money for me in the past. Past performance, I think, is a good indicator in terms of future performance. I like the differentiation in the product, and I'm very excited in particular with the orthopedic study, the data points that are going to come out here at the end of the year. So thank you, Chris, for the intro.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. And we would be super happy to connect with anybody who'd like to connect after the meeting. Just let Tien know, or you filled it in the poll, and happy to set up a call and get into some more details. Any other questions, folks, today?
Chris, it's very impressive. You not only have quote unquote the right answers, but I know they're because I've been in this space for so long. I know they're the right answers that are authentic. I hate hearing the people give these answers, and the fact that you've gotten sales, you've gotten non-dilutive funding from grants, and you've gotten awards. It just adds to it, and I just want to say I'm very impressed.
Thanks, Greg. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And just so people know, Greg and I have never met before. So
That's true. Yeah, no, good point. Other than I
yeah,
saw you on a
yeah,
previous,
yeah.
I forgot which other venture group you were presenting to. But no, yeah, I've never met any of you. And if anything, we were competitors with the whole drug-eluting stent stuff. And
Yeah,
it
I
was
love that. I love that. Yeah, and you're right. That was a very dynamic market. It was such an exciting time, and like you guys also made a bucket load of money. Yeah, it was very good. Yeah,
I think we're still manufacturing about 70% of all the drug-eluting stents on the market is
that is
Abbott and
great.
Guided.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, anyway,
yeah,
total
yeah. Focused on adhesions today. Yeah,
focus, focus, focus. And you got a mission
that's right.
and an
Yeah,
important one.
yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, look forward to connecting with you afterwards.
Please.
Yeah.
Super. Any other final questions? We have a few minutes left, but if not, we'll give you back your time. You can feel free to raise your hand. Um, okay, if not, let me just wrap by saying that we will send out the recording of this call to everybody. We thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for answering the poll. And I'll let Chris have the final word. Chris, thank you for sharing today. Really awesome update. And any last words?
Yes. So really thankful for everybody who took time out of their busy day to come and participate in the call today. Really appreciate it. And also grateful for the questions because I think, answering people's questions is the most important part. Like, let's address those. So that was helpful for us to be able to do that. So thanks, folks, for your questions. And just want to emphasize, look, two very key important inflection points. The top line data coming in from Joe for orthopedic in December, top line data for IPCO for gynecologic in mid 2027. We're raising 5 million, looking to do the closing at the end of June. So if you're interested, let's meet. And again, one of the key outcomes after the top line data is, expecting to likely do an investment or partnership or potentially even an acquisition with a larger strategic. Thanks again, everybody, and have an awesome day.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.